Welcome back to Good Law, Bad Law. Today we're talking about nursing homes. Of course, nursing homes have been so much in the news during this last year of COVID-19, the tragic number of people who died in nursing homes because of this virus. My guest today is Michael Kaplen, a lawyer in New York who, among other things, handles cases on behalf of victims of injury in nursing homes. And we're talking today about things that people can be more aware of when considering a family member for some kind of long-term care, an institution such as a nursing home, things that people can do, measures that families can take to try to reduce the risk of the kinds of injuries, unfortunately, that happen so frequently in nursing homes and that are, unfortunately, even harder to prevent during a time of pandemic such as we're in right now. So this is a really important conversation for so many families. I want to join others, including our president, just the other day, in recognizing and honoring the families of more than 500,000 people who've died during the COVID-19 pandemic, including many, many individuals in nursing homes. So we wanted to bring some attention to this issue. Michael does a great job of that in the conversation you're about to hear. Please share any comments or questions you have for us. Of course, go to wherever you're getting your podcast and give us a great review if you like the podcast that we've been putting out. And I hope you'll enjoy this episode and find it informative and useful to share with others who may be thinking about a nursing home for someone in their family or who already have a family member in a nursing home. So, everyone continue to stay safe and well, and please enjoy this episode of Good Law, Bad Law. I want to welcome my guest on today's program, Michael Kaplen. Michael is a lawyer in New York with the firm of DeCaro and Kaplen. So first of all, Michael, thank you so much for being on Good Law, Bad Law.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me today.
We're going to be talking about nursing homes in particular today, but I know that your practice is a broad one in terms of representing victims of all kinds in medical malpractice cases. Tell us a little bit about your practice generally before we get into the specific topic.
Well, we've been in practice for the last 40 years, and we have, as you, a personal injury practice. About half of it is medical malpractice, including representing individuals who have been injured in nursing homes. And the other half of our practice is an automobile practice, automobile crash, truck wrecks, construction site accidents, and we have a unique niche in the area of traumatic brain injury, and that is a big focus of what we do, representing individuals with a traumatic brain injury.
Well, and I did check your bio, of course, and I know that in the area of brain injury issues and brain injury cases that you chair the New York State Traumatic Brain Injury Services Coordinating Council. You're chair of the Traumatic Brain Injury Litigation Section for the American Association of Justice. That's the national organization for plaintiffs' attorneys, for trial attorneys. And that you actually teach at the GW Law School. Is that a course in brain injury as well?
Yes, it is. It's the only course in the country on traumatic brain injury law where we teach our students how to advocate on behalf of individuals with a traumatic brain injury. And you would think that it's really a trial practice course, but it's a lot more than that, because we have students interested in all areas of public health, law, education issues, liens and trust issues all come up in the area of brain injury law. So we cover all of those topics, and we attract a wide range of students, including in GW Law School. They uniquely qualified for service members who are studying law, as well as members of the Judge Advocate General's Corps who attend my course in order to properly represent service members who've sustained a traumatic brain injury in all aspects, including, unfortunately, criminal occurrences that might take place somewhat as a result of that brain injury.
Well, and and as we were chatting just before we started, I mean, I also represent individuals who've suffered brain injuries, and I think what probably a lot of people don't understand about the kinds of cases that you and I handle is very often you have to sort of play the part of doctor as well. These cases, to be done correctly and to be done well for the client, you have to understand and be really sensitive to the complex medical and in brain injury cases, neuroscience issues that come up, right? I mean, that's a big part of making sure these cases get handled correctly.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, we do have to concentrate a lot on the medicine of brain injury, because this is an invisible injury that you can't see, and affects 5.2 million Americans. I know you wanted to talk today a lot about nursing homes. and in thinking about brain injury and nursing homes, there is really a strong correlation that people just don't understand, coming from falls. Falls are a leading cause of brain injury to both younger individuals as well as the elderly. And when these individuals fall and sustain a fractured hip or some other injury, oftentimes they end up in a nursing home, even for short-term rehabilitation care. But people don't think about the brain injury that these individuals might have sustained when they fell and struck their head, as well as the fractured hip. So when they leave that nursing home, they might have had good rehabilitation for their fractured hip, and they're able to walk again, but they're not able to resume the life that they had before and manage things in an independent way like they were doing before, because of that brain injury or concussion that they sustained. So there is a true link between brain injuries and what we're talking about today, which is nursing homes, in addition, of course, to the bed sores, pressure ulcers that take place, unfortunately, in these homes as a result of people falling and striking their heads and ending up in that nursing home or in the hospital where they're getting care. Frequently, we see individuals in our practice who have sustained catastrophic brain injuries requiring long-term care in hospitals and nursing homes. And because they're not properly attended to, turned, positioned properly, without proper attention to their nutritional needs, they end up with avoidable bed sores. So there is a strong link between nursing home medical malpractice and traumatic brain injuries, although that might not be first apparent to someone listening.
Well, and of course, nursing homes in particular have received a lot of attention over the last year during the COVID pandemic. So many terrible stories, people dying in nursing homes and their families not even getting to be there with them, not being able to see them or touch them. What do you find from the perspective of somebody whose job it is to represent and protect the rights of people who have been injured in some way in a nursing home? What do you find have been the special problems that have come up beyond what you'd ordinarily see? What are the special kinds of issues you've seen come up that relate directly to this terrible year where we've been through, and unfortunately we're still in the midst of dealing with now?
Let's start with the proposition that every patient in a nursing home, every resident needs to be treated with dignity, compassion, and respect. And unfortunately, during this COVID-19 pandemic, that oftentimes doesn't happen because of the stress that workers are being faced with themselves, because there are not enough workers present in these facilities to provide proper care, because these individuals are not able to communicate with their family or close friends and are left isolated in their rooms. These are all issues, and there are issues, of course, for family members as well, in not being able to visit their loved ones, hold their hands, and be with them in these really trying times. So there are many issues that we have to contend with now because of COVID-19 that we didn't have to contend with in the past. And yet we have to understand that there has to be a patient-first policy when it comes to residents of nursing homes, and with COVID-19, to ensure they are getting the care and dignity and respect that they are entitled to. Just because we're in COVID-19 pandemic doesn't excuse poor care, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get a discount in these nursing homes at the end of the month on their bill because of COVID-19. So they are entitled to the same care that they would have been entitled to prior to COVID-19. As a simple way of putting it.
I think one of the trying to think of this from the perspective of family members. The decision to put a parent or any loved one in an institutional facility like a nursing home is a difficult one, and I know that from talking to many families myself, one of the issues of greatest concern is that you don't know what goes on when you're not there. Let's say you're the adult son or daughter of a parent in a nursing home. You don't know what goes on when you're not there, and oftentimes the only way to assure that your loved one is getting not just not even the best care, just the basics, just basic good care, responsible care. The only way to assure that that's happening is to be present, to be in communication with staff, to sometimes, frankly, to be that greasy wheel to make sure that your loved one gets attention. That obviously has been extraordinarily difficult to do when there were these long periods of lockdown and families couldn't get inside these facilities. Is that something you've seen, a deterioration in the ability of family members to not only be with their loved ones for support, but to be present in these facilities to make sure that the nursing home staff is doing all the things that they ought to be doing?
You're absolutely right. That's a very important point because, look, nursing homes are dangerous places, and patients, residents in nursing homes need an advocate on their side to
Right.
make sure that they get the care that they need, make sure that when they're supposed to get therapy once or twice a day, that they're really getting that therapy, that food is not left on a tray at the side of their bed, and then the patient doesn't eat and nobody attempts to feed the patient. So 45 minutes later, an aide comes and takes the tray that the patient didn't touch because the patient can't eat by themselves. They can't feed themselves. Make sure that the medicine is actually ingested by the patient. Make sure that when the patient needs to use the restroom, get out of bed, that and they press that bell or light, that somebody comes. And it's really important to have someone there at the patient's side to make sure as best you can that all of this gets done. And with COVID-19, as you pointed out, unfortunately, that portion is missing.
So what would you tell families? How do people deal with that? It's a problem at any time, but in with the restrictions that we've all had to live with, and the family members who have loved ones in a nursing facility, face in even stricter terms. What can people do, or what do you tell families?
That's a hard question to answer. At times there unfortunately is very little that you could do. The only thing that if you have the opportunity, and I would strongly suggest this, is that you put in a little web camera in the room to be able to record what's taking place when you're not there, to see for yourself if your loved one is getting the care that they're entitled to get. It's a hard thing to do, but you can do it. And if you can't be there in person, that's the next best thing. And I wouldn't ask anybody's permission to do it. I would just do it.
Right.
If you can,
That's
if you could get internet access and get it set up. I could assure you that for the most part, the staff of the nursing home just wouldn't even know that it was there.
Yeah. And the technology's gotten so much better in recent years and more affordable that is a good solution. And in fact, I have a case right now involving a nursing home where an adult daughter did just that. And unfortunately, the things that the camera recorded were not good. And including staff at this particular facility not wearing masks when they came into the patient's room or into the resident's room, not giving medications, not responding in some pretty shocking ways to the needs of this person. That's what you need to know. Again, you need to know what you're not there to see for yourself. So that does seem like a very good approach for people to consider if they have someone in this type of facility.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to talk like this, but that's the reality of the situation that we just can't avoid. So we have to understand the realities and deal with them as best we can.
Michael, what do you find in terms of the quality of the staff or the level of training and experience of the staff? How big an issue is that, and is that something people ought to be aware of and asking questions about even before they commit a family member to a nursing home facility?
Well, the problem is when we talk about the quality of the staff, we have to understand that staff is a variety of different people, from aides to attendants to therapists to nurses. There's a whole range of individuals who interact with the resident. Unfortunately, in nursing homes, which are profit-making enterprises, profits come before patients sometimes, and there is not proper staffing in these homes. So the staff, even if they are good intentioned, and I truly believe that most of the staff is good intentioned and want to provide good care, they're just stretched to the limits because there is not enough staff to go around, and the aide or the nurse cannot be in two places at the same time. And they're not provided with enough assistance in order to service the needs of everybody. So that's a big problem. The other problem is the training that these individuals receive at times, and the salaries that they're being paid. We're asking people to do really hard, difficult work, and pay them at times minimum wages to do it. So there is a large turnover of staff, understandably, because of that. So we have to ensure that workers in these facilities get adequate pay, have adequate training, and that these facilities are adequately staffed. Um, Now, how do you ensure that you are going to a facility that meets this criteria? Well, very difficult. You can look at reviews that are online, um, the star reviews that these facilities are given. But I think it's also important to look, at least in New York, um, there are quality assurances and investigators that come to review complaints in nursing homes from the State Department of Health,
Mm-hmm.
and they write deficiencies when these facilities are not up to standards, up to regulations. And there is a book in the facility that you are entitled to look at.
Huh?
And I would go through that book and see what the complaints are and what the findings are to see what's going on there. That book is a public record, and you are entitled to look in that book in the facility. Um,
Well, that's good to know, because I was going to say that those deficiency reports and state complaints, and we have a similar system here in Pennsylvania, are very often pretty easily found online. But if you're a family considering a facility and they are obligated to make that type of information available to you, that's a very good thing for people to know, that they can ask for that and that they have to be provided that.
yeah, and it's doing your homework in advance.
Right, right. Well, I mentioned masks a little while ago. Obviously, uh, we've all had to become accustomed to mask wearing as part of prevention against this virus. Um, and there's no question that nursing homes, as well as all hospitals and other medical facilities, have been overwhelmed in so many different ways because of this pandemic. Um, but one of the issues that's come up in conversations about what Congress can do to provide assistance, to provide relief to people, including this new package of relief that's being discussed in Washington right now, among some members of Congress, has been a call for immunity on the part of healthcare providers during this pandemic. Um, how how does that relate to the issue of nursing homes, and what do people need to understand about immunity, and what is your position, or what do you think of that issue, the question of whether healthcare providers should have immunity?
Well, I don't think these health care providers should get immunity. I don't believe that anyone who is negligent should have immunity um, from a lawsuit. Um, that let's start with that, and the fact that these nursing homes are requesting immunity, to me, is just shocking in and of itself, and the fact that state legislatures are giving these facilities immunity is just horrendous, in my opinion. If somebody is negligent, they need to be responsible for the harms that they cause. It's as simple as that. Um, Now, the fact that these facilities in New York, although there's no more immunity in New York, um, for COVID-19 related instances, getting immunity doesn't preclude a lawsuit if you could show that there was gross negligence involved. Now, that's going to be a little more difficult to prove, but I think we could try to do that and show um, through an economic analysis of these nursing homes that the reason that some of this poor care has taken place, and the reason that these individuals are injured, has really nothing to do with COVID-19, but the lack of
Right.
of these homes to provide proper staffing, and that's just a money issue on their part, and they're just using COVID-19 as a convenient excuse.
Right. And so, if anyone listening who has questions or concerns about that, I think one thing you have to understand is that every state's going to be a little different on that issue. Whether there's any immunity, what the extent of that immunity is, in other words, what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And so just because you may have heard this term immunity being talked about in the context of COVID or in the context of COVID relief doesn't mean that immunity actually exists or stands in the way of protecting the rights of someone who's been injured in a nursing home, right?
Right.
So, all right. So, what are the types of things then that you see? I also say, by the way, I mean, I think you said that if you've been negligent and caused harm, then there has to be a way to hold that person or that institution accountable. But also, and I'm curious whether you found this as well in your cases. Sometimes the state regulators, the state investigators, they can only do so much, and they don't have the budgets for it. They don't have, again, despite good intentions, they just don't have the ability to enforce quality standards everywhere that needs to happen. And often, a nursing home lawsuit, like the kind that you handle, Michael, I mean, often it's like being a private attorney general. It's like it is a certain kind of enforcement that leads to better quality, so that it's not just about money or compensation. It's also about holding these facilities to standards that they ought to be held to for the benefit of everybody who's in that facility. What do you think about that?
I think you're right. When no one is responsible, no one is safe, and there has to be responsibility. Now, health departments, Medicare investigators, they're trying to ensure that there is safety for patients in these facilities without question. But they're coming in after the fact, and we as attorneys are really there as police as well, because we have the opportunity to review the records and ask questions in discovery of the people who are providing care or should have been providing care, and really get to the bottom line and the truth. And that's what a lawsuit is about, getting to the bottom line and the truth. A lawsuit sometimes is the best vehicle for obtaining that information.
Well, so what are the more common kinds of problems that you run into in handling these kinds of cases? What are the kinds of things, in other words, that people need to be aware of if something like this happens? That's the kind of thing that's not acceptable. It's not the usual course. It's the kind of thing that does need the attention, probably the attention of an attorney experienced in handling these types of cases. What are the more common things that you run across?
Well, we run across issues of pressurosis, because patients aren't properly turned and positioned and allowed to stay in one position for an extended period of time, resulting in horrible injuries. We see patients who unfortunately sustain falls in these facilities because they are not properly attended to. They ring a call bell or a call light and nobody comes to provide assistance to them. They are not transferred properly from a bed to a wheelchair or to a toileting facility, and they end up falling. We see patients who sustain all kinds of different injuries as a result of not having proper nutrition in the facility. They weren't properly evaluated by a nutritionist, or their recommendations haven't been properly followed. We see patients in these facilities whose not getting the therapy that they're entitled to, and their conditions deteriorate rather than improve. We see facilities where there is horrible rates of infection because of poor hygiene. These are the typical issues that we see in nursing home cases that keep repeating, unfortunately, and repeating over and over again. And we call many of these never events. That's not a term that I've come up with. This is a term that's come up by the federal government itself. The cubitus ulcers, falls, these are considered never events that shouldn't happen if a patient is receiving proper care.
Oof, okay. And now, what about, in New York in particular, people listening may have heard about some heat that your governor is taking recently, Governor Cuomo, over the number of nursing home deaths during COVID that were reported. I imagine that's something you've been following. What do you know about that, and what should people understand about that issue?
Well, right now this is a political hot potato issue, and I don't know where the truth really lies in all of this, and not getting into the politics of it all. To me, it's not the reporting of the numbers of individuals that's important to me. It's the care that these individuals are receiving, either in a nursing home or in a hospital. That's the relevant consideration as far as I'm concerned, not the actual number of individuals, because even one death or one unnecessary injury is one too many. So I'm not going to comment on people taking pot shots at each other in the middle of a crisis.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you've already had a number of really good suggestions for what people ought to be thinking about and asking questions about. We talked about checking online or asking for the materials that the facility has and has to show about whether they've been investigated or cited by a state authority. The suggestion of putting a camera. Even once this pandemic is done, that seems like a very reasonable suggestion to make sure that you have the ability, just as lots of people will have cameras in the room where they have a baby, when the babysitter's there or a nanny's taking care of a child. Lots of people will do that. So that seems like a pretty good suggestion as well for people to consider. Are there other things that you'd recommend, really from a consumer point of view, to try to prevent the horrible types of never should happen injuries that you were talking about before?
Well, from a consumer point of view, as we talked about earlier, it's important that a family member, a friend, really monitor what is going on in this facility to ensure that their loved one is cared for properly and safety concerns are being attended to. There's just no two ways about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you get to know the staff personally, just as if you had a loved one in an ICU or an ER in a hospital after surgery, you'd like to talk to the nurses, you'd like to meet the doctor. It seemed like the more you do that, the more they're going to, you hope, give the kind of attention your family member needs when you're not there. I mean, that just
very true.
Basic, but it's vital.
Yes, very true.
Wow. Okay. Well, a lot to think about, and unfortunately, many people. I mean, we just passed 500,000 deaths in this country, and a lot of those we know have been in nursing homes. So a lot of families dealing with the loss of loved ones in nursing homes, and unfortunately, it's not going to completely resolve itself anytime very soon. So I'm really glad we had a chance to talk about this and bring some attention to the kinds of issues that people ought to be aware of and some ways that they can think about making things better going forward. I hope that people appreciate what you've shared with us, and I know I do, Michael. So thank you so much for being on Good Law, Bad Law. My guest, Michael Kaplen from the law firm of DeCaro and Kaplen in New York. Michael, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed talking with you today, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Sounds great. Thanks again.